Well, this optic needs no introduction, but I will tell you, in case you're unfamiliar with the Element Theos 6-36, this is one of the best optics I have ever had in hand, and certainly one of the best optics on the channel right now. Extremely pleased, very, very pleased with this optic. And as much as I would love to do a tabletop and just tell you every little detail that I love about the optic, I think the best thing that I can do is shoot it and show you. So I'm going to attempt to hook up my side shot scope cam. I'll have a little bit of downrange footage for you, hopefully recording through a spotter. I'm going to do everything I can just to show you that this optic is the most premium optic that I currently have, and it does everything that it's supposed to do, and perhaps a little more than I expected as well. And so without further ado, let's shoot it. Whoops, spoke too soon. So I put the bolts on the left side of my scope rings, and so that actually interferes a little bit with the scope mount, the camera mount for my phone. So instead, what I'm going to do is set up a spotting scope, and you're going to be able to see if I get those impacts here at 620 yards. Here we go. So we're looking at the yellow big target on the right, then the 2/3 just left of that on that target hanger, and then all the way left on the very periphery there, I have a 6-inch swinger there at 620 yards using Berger 130 grain open tip match. All right, as you saw, I went 5 for 6. Unfortunately, I did miss one time on that 6-inch target, technically sub-MOA at this distance, just barely. And I think I know what happened there. I think I had a really bad trigger press. The rifle seemed set up well. It was steady. Optic was right where it should have been. I was holding 2/10 to the right, and I think I pulled that trigger a little bit poorly. The next round followed up on it, and looks like a dead center hit to me. Well, the rifle is phenomenal. Savage is just making excellent Slayer rifles. This thing is so easy to shoot. It is so comfortable to get behind, and I love the ACC chassis. Of course, MDT, one of the biggest and best names in the business, in my opinion, for sure. But that needs to be paired with something that's very capable. And in this case, I think it's kind of funny because this is probably one of the most capable optics that you'll ever see on my channel. I think it's in price reach for most people if they will save up. An easy way to get there, guys, is stop buying a bunch of really cheap optics. If shooting is your gig, if shooting is your game, and you want to get to the next level, yes, glass quality matters. Internals matter. And I say that pretty often, and I know that there's got to be different price points for different people. I reviewed the Titan series from Element, and the Titan is, a step below this in optical quality. The optical quality of the Titans is, it's decent. It's not anywhere near this, though. I just have to say this is next level stuff. Optically, the image that I'm getting, the color that I'm getting, and of course the capability to run it up to 36 power and not have a poor quality image is phenomenal. So it's price effective, I think, for a person who's actually going to get into shooting, and shooting is your thing. You know, you're not going to have a safe queen that you take out once or twice a year. I mean, if you can afford that, if you have the cash for that, great. This is a really good optic for you too. But I'm going to say people who are actually committed to shooting, competition, target practice, maybe hunting, like varminting, this optic is way up there. I'm going to say that I prefer it over some of the competitors. There's only 3 that come to mind in the 6 to 36 category that are at least well known from other people, or even reasonable to compare it against. And I'm going to say I prefer this by far. There's a few reasons why, and it's not just a connection to Element. I'm not shilling for them. Quite frankly, I shoot a lot of optics on my channel, a lot of brands, but I prefer this for a number of reasons. Number one is this optic was easy for me to get behind. I did not fight the eye box on this optic, which when I start pushing up to higher powers, when I was putting on my 22 or air rifles, especially, if I'm going to push it up to 36 power, but the eye box is almost impossible, well, you know, whatever. Why even have 36 power other than spotting purposes? But this, optically, it did not darken overly harsh, just a little bit of darkening. The image did not just suddenly kind of wash out. That's something that happens on those cheap 36 or 6 to 36 optics or high magnification optics. Generally, the image is going to wash out. In anything less than ED glass, it's not even reasonable to try. And this glass could sustain the image to a very usable place. And going beyond here, when I was out at 1,000, going up to 36 power just for fun, I don't typically do that, but just for fun, you know what? It was easy for me to get behind compared to even some 5 to 30s that I've run from different brands. And so I'm going to say it is superior to the Titan series, which I've reviewed both of those. Let's see, I did the 5 to 25 and 3 to 18. I'm still shooting those. I still love them. And they have some very special things about them. But they have one thing in common with this, and that's the reticle. The reticle in the 6 to 36 and the Titan series that I reviewed, it's the same reticle. And I feel like this is probably the reticle for me. Okay, my style. That's what it is. It's my style reticle. It goes to that 20 mils. So no matter what caliber I put it on, I'm going to be able to run it pretty far with holdovers. And I do max out optics pretty often. I like to just see what the functional capability is of pretty much everything that I have. And so having 20 mils of holdover means that whatever's on top here, whatever I have internally for elevation, this one is limited down to around 23 mils on this particular setup. And internally it has a limiter. With that 23 mils, I can go very, very far, but I'm going to need a little bit more for a mile here in April. And I will be using this combination at a mile. So that reticle, having 20 mils of holdover, it grants me so much more distance with whatever caliber I shoot. And since that's just my hobby, that's the way I like to have fun, I don't like having optics that have a lot of limitations. I know of a couple optics that are more expensive than this, also high magnification optics, and they're limited to something like 10 mils in the reticle and 25 to 29 mils internally. And that bothers me personally, just because I know even if it's a great image, I can't go further. And since that's what I'm kind of dedicated to, is just trying things, pushing things as far as they can, shooting air rifles at hundreds of yards and 22s at several hundred yards, even almost out to 1,000, almost right now. When I get a couple devices, that's going to change. Anyways, this reticle is something that I feel like I need. Not to mention the center dot, the reticle. That's the thing you're staring at. And if you're going to dial with something like this that's as reliable as this is, with such an excellent image, I'm going to be dialing as often as I can, unless I need to go fast, then the reticle will meet me there. But I'm going to be dialing, and I need that center dot to be visible. And I'm just really struggling with the smaller center dots more and more. I don't know if it's age or if I've just always struggled and I didn't realize it, but those 0.03 size center dots, even 0.04, I do struggle a little bit in that range. But for whatever reason, the way that this reticle is designed, I would say this size up to 0.08 size reticles, even up to like 0.09 size reticles, those I can pick up excellent. I don't think they obscure targets, and they make it faster for shooting. So here at 620 yards, when I was shooting on that 1 MOA roughly size target, I was able to really easily pick up where is that center dot in relation to my blasted out target. The target's been hit a bunch of times and it's gray and it's dark or black or it's in the shadow. I had enough contrast here with the glass. You know, the glass met me where I need it to be with the sun going down, and then the contrast of the size of the dot. So I know I'm blabbing a lot here, but it actually really matters to me a lot, and I'm more and more frustrated with other brands that just don't have reticles that are easy enough to see. And I'm not alone in that. There's a number of other reviewers who have commented on this, and I realized I'm in pretty good company. There's plenty of people who think that the really small center dots are just getting too fine, and unless you're doing a very particular kind of shooting, those really small center dots are just not helpful for this type of shooting, and especially hunting, not to mention PRS, NRL-22, and the average Joe out there who doesn't have, you know, hawk vision. So they did a great job. I love this. It's the feature that I love between all three of those optics. Not only that, but that's probably the main thing because it's what I'm looking at every time I shoot. All right, taking a look at some of the features. First, let's take a look at that diopter. The reticle focus here is pretty smooth, no grit, firm enough that this is not going to move on its own. Some of them are so smooth and so light, like the pressure is so little, the resistance is so little, that I have fear with some optics that the ocular adjustment here, the reticle focus, is going to move on its own or just get bumped or in a bag, something, and that can be really frustrating to suddenly have your reticle out of focus, especially when you're right before a stage, maybe your first stage of the day at a match. You cannot have a reticle issue. It'll confuse you. You might think it's parallax. You might just get really disoriented. And so I need something that can stay put. And this one is going to stay put, even though I didn't lock it. Taking a look at the mag ring here, it is glass smooth as you would expect. Again, proper resistance. I would have no issue with this in any sort of way. One of the best mag rings I think I've turned. There's no slop whatsoever in the tolerances. And from 6 to 36, the amount of movement is not too bad. Looking at about a 180 here. Something like that. Maybe not quite a 180. But I like that. It's very smooth. The nub here is going to assist in moving it quickly if you need to quickly spot for someone or drop magnification down to gain field of view. I have no issues with that at all, and in the winter time I don't have a lot of snow on the ground at all because Minnesota's been oddly warm, but it's about 20 degrees right now, and at 20 degrees this isn't stiff or stuck, and the texture on this, the knurling, is aggressive, and it's going to be fairly uniform on the other dials and knobs as well, so you can get a good purchase on it every time that you move it. Pretty flawless, guys. I'm very happy with this. Let's take a look at this parallax dial here. Now the parallax is incredibly smooth, and it does go all the way down to 10 meters. That makes me very happy. With a 10 meter minimum here, I can use this on air guns, 22s, center fire. I can use that on anything, I believe, because I can, I actually use it in my backyard on the air gun. That's pretty cool. I could switch it over to there if I really want to. I'm going to have a hard time doing that because I just love my center fire right now, so it's going to stay here. But I could switch it over to my air rifle if I want to do an air rifle competition. I wanted the best optic out there. I'm sure this would be it. The other great thing about having a minimum 10-yard parallax is that you can kind of maybe rough zero your optic in the living room. And I don't mean with live ammo. I mean bore sighting. If you kind of know what you're doing with that, you can get really close. You can set the parallax to 10 yards. And if you have 10 yards, a lot of people do in their house, you can get very, very close. And so you're not wasting ammo when you get out to the range, and just be prepared for the next day. Here in Minnesota, we don't have a lot of sunlight, so I take every advantage I can get. Indicators are at 15, 20, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 75, 100, 150, 200, 300, 500, and 1,000. I found that all these numbers are pretty darn close. In fact, it's accurate for my eye. I hesitate to say that because some people are then going to expect that it's perfect for their eye. That's just not how it works. But for my eye, these numbers do in fact line up. A lot of people know about this feature. This is the illumination, and I'm going to show you some reticle footage here in just a second, but it is a push button style illumination, and I really love it. The tactile click is easy to discern and go on and off and change intensity. All right, taking a look at the turrets. Now the turrets are toolless. In fact, they do have a 0 stop and a revolution indicator, as well as a revolution limiter. And so the turrets are more of a thuddy style. They line up exactly on that witness line as they should. You can go below your 0 by about a half mil there. That's really nice to have that, especially if you're going between having a can on or off. Hot weather, cold weather, which is something I seem to deal with daily. These turrets are spectacular. Some of the best in the business, no doubt. Now, if you notice that, this indicator right here, as I go from 11 and we get a little bit past 11 and a half, right about there, it's going to flip over and let you know you're in your second revolution. And it's going to limit me out right there. So about 22 mils with my rail. And that will get me with the holdover reticle out past a mile. And I'm going to prove that in not too long here. The windage is capped, and I prefer that almost all the time. Just a protection on there. They are resettable to 0 by removing this exterior dial. And they are also very tactile, clicky, feel great. And you can see that I have already zeroed these. But I'm going to tell you the windage feels just as good as the elevation to me. Of course, that 56mm objective is a monster. And it lets in a lot of light. Of course, if you're getting too much light coming in, that can cause some issues. I don't have that issue very often. But if I do, or I want my image to have better depth of focus or depth of field, then I can put in that front aperture. And what that's going to do is reduce the amount of light coming in to some degree, and it's also going to help you look through more of the center of the glass and give you a little bit better depth of field. I'll show you that in just a second. As you can see, I've also chosen to outfit mine with some Element branded rings. Element makes fantastic rings, and I'm very happy to have these. In fact, I had another brand of rings on here before, and I had just been tightening them down, and they snapped. Unfortunately, the other brand, which is a known brand, did fail me. I was really disappointed, but these rings have been pretty often on my best optic. Whatever that is at the time, I've chosen these rings, and now they're here for a reason. Not just because it's an Element, but because I can trust these rings, and I do not want failure. Going between the cold and the hot just seems to stress things out a lot, and I shoot in pretty cold temperatures and then pretty warm temperatures, so it's just something I have to be aware of. And then torque pressure, obviously, read what's on the box. Do not over torque your rings, and I haven't been, but those previous rings failed me, and these, I'm pretty sure, are never going to. Did you know that Savage not only makes excellent firearms, but they also make some awesome outerwear, like this ducked down vest that I'm wearing right now. Impact. Impact. They also make the sweater that I'm wearing right now underneath. And it's really great as a base layer in cold places like Minnesota, or just chilly places down south, those occasional summer nights where a cool air comes in and blows on you. I really, really like the duck down vest right now. All impacts. But I know in a couple months, I'm going to be wearing this vest very often by itself, or the sweater underneath as springtime comes. And I will definitely be putting it on when I go out to shoot some competitions in the spring with this rifle, which is a Savage 110 EP chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor. Impact and empty. All right, 625 yards on the yellow IDPA. Using the Element Theos 6-36. So obviously dealing with just a little bit of wind, but all hits on target, just favoring slightly left, and easily with the spotter can easily pick those up. All right, a few more things that I am pretty into about this optic would be, of course, the turrets. A lot of people are commenting on turret failure from other companies in the 6 to 36 category, or just poor turret feel for the price point. And these, there's nothing. They left nothing. There's no error that I'm discerning in my data. All my data matches up good. I did not do a tall target test on this, and I probably won't because they do testing on their optics, and I actually really trust Element. That's just maybe a quirk of mine, but I trust them, and if I notice a big error, I will then send it back and deal with warranty. But otherwise, I just think that these are good to go. The feel is the best. It's the best. I love these. I don't have a bunch of other comparisons in that $5,000 category right here to show you. I'm sure I could borrow a couple, but when I tested those, some of those other brands in that $5,000 category in the turrets against this, these are right there, man. They're excellent. They're audible. It's more of a thud than it is a high pitch click. Some other optics that are very popular, they have a high pitched ticky click kind of sound, and those are popular for a reason. People like the tactile nature, and it just feels good to feel that, you know, kind of rough click. These are not smooth or sloppy at all. They're really refined, very distinct. And the spacing in particular, this is where I'm going to get snobbish, I guess. For me, the spacing between the tenths and the amount of effort it takes to move the turrets is perfect. I love it. It is my preferred tension. It's my preferred distance between the 10th clicks, and just the feel in general. Very responsive, but not worried about it moving on its own. That's not an issue for me at all. I'm not even a little concerned about that. And I can discern that single tenth. If I want to dial to 5.7, it's not hard for me to get to exactly where I'm going, because the witness line here, as well as the 10th marker, line up exactly. I'm not left with any curiosity about, is it exactly on 5.7 or is it more like 5.8? Is there internal error that I should be worried about? I don't have to worry about those things. And I'm not 100% sure on some of the other 6 to 36s that I have that same degree of confidence. I like them. And some of the other ones you've seen me review on the channel, I like them. But they're not as good as this. I prefer this. The reticle, the feel of the turrets, the things that I'm grabbing onto the most on this scope, which would be the parallax and the turrets. Sometimes the magnification ring, I do tend to leave it right around 15 power, but yeah, they're excellent. Now, it's a feature that a lot of people like. I can take it or leave it. I don't have to have it, but a revolution indicator like this, again, very, very smooth. I like seeing which revolution I'm on, especially with the ELR stuff that's up and coming. I like to know exactly where I'm at, and if I'm in a rush, if I'm in a comp, I might do something goofy and I might be in a second revolution on accident, and it's nice to be able to look up and see number 2 or number 1 on that flipper, that little tab right there. So it's one more gun game thing that might matter a lot. Just ethically hunting long range, if you need to be dialing out quite a ways, it would be a really good idea to know if you're in second or first revolution. So that's neat, and I feel like they did a really good job. It's unique. It's not the same as some of the other revolution indicators that are on the top with a button that sort of lifts up and sort of, you know, settles down. This is more just 100% clear to me. Am I in the second rev or not? But I love having a capped windage turret. I don't mess with windage much unless it's insanely windy, which isn't very often, where I'm shooting in 20 plus mile an hour winds. Unless it's insanely windy and I'm shooting very, very far, typically I just want to use the horizontal line. I want to dial for my elevation, and I want to use the horizontal holds for windage. Having a cap on there just prevents damage or getting thrown around, or if a drop happens, it's one more protective measure, and my buddies isn't going to mess with it in a competition, going to come grab it and twist it. It's capped, so that's nice. So that in itself is an extra feature. Again, most people don't demand it, but it's really nice to have, and it's one more feature that sets this apart from some of the other competitors. The parallax is incredibly smooth, so smooth, and depth of field is excellent. If you needed to throw on that aperture ring, you can change that a little bit and improve that technically. I haven't needed too much. It's probably the season I'm shooting in and the direction I'm shooting most of the time. But in the future, I will be trying that out. So far, I really like the parallax. I like the image I'm getting in the depth of focus or field. I think it's one of the best. It's way better than another 6-36 that I've reviewed and another one that I've had in hand quite a bit. I just think it's better. Some people might argue that they just prefer the warmth, the look of warmth from another type of glass. Maybe one of the 6-36s has a little bit warmer, one's a little bit cooler. That is not necessarily a quality concern. That is more of a preference. And so for me, just going to preference again, not saying it's better necessarily, I prefer the image, the color that this comes up with, the rendition and all that. It just seems better to me, the way that I shoot, the things I shoot against. Maybe if I shot in a warmer climate or in a desert, maybe I would think a little differently, but I can't really tell you how that would be. I'm just going to say I prefer this image versus the other 6-36s that I've been looking at, which includes things like the depth of focus and how much is really clear to me. How much do I have to touch that parallax? How finicky are things? Obviously, in a competition setting, I don't want to be messing with that a whole lot. I'm more and more comfortable engaging targets that are a couple hundred yards difference even without touching the parallax much at all, because it's just generally acceptable, and the parallax error that does exist is not significant enough that I'm going to miss like a 2/3 size IDPA target. For some people, the push button illumination is just that one more thing that sets it above a lot of the competition. I think it's extremely decent. I don't live in the desert, so I can't comment on those insanely bright days that a lot of you guys do, but I have snow reflection, and when the sun is out and it's on the snow, it is actually really, really bright. And this has been able to combat that enough that I can see the illumination of the reticle, and I'm not too concerned about it. I like push button illumination. I don't have to have it, but it is one more thing that sets this optic apart from the competition. It's a refinement, if you will. And I'm finding that it just makes me like this optic more than some of the other ones that are just kind of status quo illumination. This is a step above one more time. And one more thing, I would be remiss if I didn't mention how much I value the zero set feature here. Having a toolless zero stop reset it's pretty nice. It could just be because I do channel stuff and I switch optics around from rifle to rifle, so I don't like trying to find my wrench for this or that. I think this is the future. I think Element really hit it on the head, that this is a great way that they can do it. It doesn't increase the price of the optics significantly. It's just a really smart design. It's reliable, it's robust, and it's so easy that in weather changes, which I have season to season, I do need to change my zero a little bit. And it's just the way that I shoot. I'll change my zero instead of using offsets. And I can dial below my zero. If I throw a can on here, or I shoot a different load and I'm shooting at only 100 yards, or just point blank distances in general, it's easy for me to deal with that using the turret with hold under or actually dialing under, which is more precise generally and preferred if I can get to it. The zero set or toolless zero set, I don't have to carry anything around, so anytime I'm in the field, I can just grab this and go for it, and the windage is equally smooth and easy as well. That cannot be skipped over. That has to be something that matters quite a bit, because it sets it apart from the other optics one more time as being just really simple, very, very cost-effective way to go about what they did.